Hello and welcome to When Grooms Get Engaged, a podcast about a guy's perspective to wedding planning from two guys that just found their own. I'm Steve.
And I'm Chris. And each week we will talk about how we navigated a different part of the wedding planning journey, what we learned in the process, and what maybe we wish we had done differently. All right, I'm excited. Are we doing another AMA Reddit part 2 episode?
Exactly, Chris. We're answering Reddit's toughest questions about wedding planning. I like to go on Reddit. I like to keep track of questions that are interesting. And Chris, I was going to go through these, so let's kind of give people our opinion.
Cool.
Let's start. First one, wedding planner is giving me the ick. Would it be wrong to switch when my current one hasn't really done anything wrong per se? So this bride says, I'll preface this by saying my wedding is still a year away, and I've already booked all my major vendors. I'm now just at the point of organizing the finer details like decor and whatnot. So logistically, wouldn't be a nightmare to switch planners, I assume. I've also only paid a 30% deposit, which I would be willing to forfeit if this is the right choice. So my wedding planner hasn't done anything wrong. She's actually been really responsive and organized. My issue is that I am getting the ick seeing her social profiles come up lately. I know everyone has different tastes and whatnot, but I haven't seen a single wedding come up in her socials since I've booked her that I will be happy with aesthetically. Everything is looking very dated, 10 years already, and not exactly the vibe I'm going for. Also, when I go through the comments on their Instagram post, it's very obvious they have paid for followers since every comment, I'm talking hundreds of comments, agrees completely with their message, and I look at these profiles and they're clearly fake. So the question is, what do I do? Would I be a diva for switching to a planner who I feel is more in line with my vision? Would this sour relationships with the vendors I've already booked?
Wow, that is a super interesting situation.
Right.
I think initial thoughts are, well, one, I'll just say, this is all of the things you should have done when you were interviewing planners, is looking at their social media, interviewing multiple people, looking just at what they've done in the past to make sure that they've executed similar looking weddings to what you're looking for, right? So with all that being said, of like, just you kind of put yourself into this situation, I think it's absolutely fine to change wedding planners. I mean, it's going to be maybe an uncomfortable conversation, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you are vibing with this person. This person's going to be responsible for executing your vision, and you're only going to be talking to them more and more and more as you get closer to the wedding date. So they have enough time to kind of bring somebody else in. And I think it's absolutely fine as long as, again, you're willing to lose that deposit to bring somebody on board that you feel more comfortable with.
When I was reading this, I thought the same exact thing. I'm like, you didn't look at this person's Instagram before you booked them? What
That's
is
like
going
basic.
on? Yeah, and if this is the first thing you do, any vendor you book, if they have any social media presence, look at it. See what they post, see what they're doing, see who they're associating with. Like, why would you book this person? It seems that everything since booking them, you are not happy with, which doesn't make sense. So look at this person. If you don't like what they're posting, just know that your wedding will probably look the same way. Because it also sounds like they are probably the ones who recommended some of your vendors as well. So they will also be looking that same way. And right now, you have plenty of time to get out of this. And Chris, I know we talked about those wedding planners. Don't be afraid to cut them. They're going to be doing everything for your wedding. They're the most important person when it comes to planning it. So, like, if it's someone you don't think you'll have a good relationship with, or they won't do any kind of vision that you're thinking about, you're going to have to cut them, because otherwise you're just going to be like bitter for the rest of your life. So yeah, Chris, I agree. You should look at this person's socials way before this happened, but you also have more than enough time to remove it and kind of go with someone else.
Yeah, and you know, as you mentioned, like I can't remember from the prompt whether they like hired all of their vendors yet, but if they haven't, like this person is probably responsible, as you said, to like also provide recommendations of people they've worked with in the past, and it might, you know, their vision or what they might execute is not going to be what you want, and so you need someone to bring in like vendors and recommendations of things to do that are going to more align with your visions. Yeah, and you're coming to this decision point at the right time, because this is probably the perfect time to maybe, you know, cut bait, go with somebody else and bring them on board, because you still have a full year before your wedding. So you have a lot of time to get this new person on board, have those discussions. So yeah, absolutely fine to do it.
Yeah, I think in general, you're okay wanting to cut someone just because of a feeling at this
Yeah.
point. They don't even have to have done anything wrong. Like totally justified in having that thought. So, Chris, I'm glad we agree on this.
Yeah.
How about this next one? Another wedding planner question. This one's a long one. So strap in. Do I have unrealistic expectations for my wedding planner? So, this bride says, I'm trying to get an idea if I have an unreasonable expectation of my wedding planner. Our wedding date is approximately 4 months out. We don't have any of our design determined. We don't have a schedule for the rehearsal dinner, welcome hour, or any of the ceremony, cocktail hour, reception. We don't have a menu. We haven't started invites. We haven't looked at florals, no table settings, no cake, etc. Currently, I have no idea or plan what the wedding will look like. We met with our wedding planner about 3 months ago. We left that meeting with a few to-dos for the planner, which included scheduling a tasting, hair and makeup trials, floor decors, and potentially a cake testing. She only got back to me with the hair and makeup trials about 5 to 6 weeks ago and scheduled it on times I specifically said I couldn't make. And then rescheduled it on a different day that specifically said I couldn't make. I ended up rescheduling it for the third time myself. We haven't heard anything else of substance from her since then. It feels as though she has not fully completed any task we have given her, and any task that has been completed has required several reminders and prodding from us. We got a planner specifically so we didn't have to be the one to keep up with every small thing. I'm so frustrated and honestly hope I am being unreasonable because at least that would mean I can expect the wedding to go off the ground. So this person is wondering, are they unrealistic in their expectations, right? One thing I forgot to mention, we purchased an all-inclusive planning and design package. It doesn't limit the number of meetings. It provides for reasonable timely communication on their part. And they're an attorney, so they reviewed the contract. So yeah, are they being unreasonable with their expectations of their wedding planner?
Short answer is no. That's tough. I would also feel very nervous if I had
Mm-hmm.
all of those things left to do when we're like 4 months out. You still have time. So at least that's a good point of this. They can bring somebody else on board. It's just going to be, how do you extricate yourself from this contract and what they've already done? And that's probably going to be a little bit stressful. Also, I'm not sure if they're part of a larger organization of wedding planners. So maybe you could say, like, this person is not working out. Is there somebody else within the company that can take over for me? So that way you don't have to like start completely over, and you'd still be able to be held to that original contract. You wouldn't have to like pay any additional money or anything like that. But this wedding planner seems like bad news, and I'd be looking for an immediate replacement.
Yeah, I think when you have a wedding planner, especially if it's like all in wedding planner, months out, no expectation is unrealistic, right? Because that's pretty much what they do. And it sounds like this person hasn't done anything. Uh, I like, Chris, I was reading this, I was like, you have 4 months to do all this shit.
Yeah.
Most of this should have been done. Like,
Yeah.
there's
And
there's no.
just like scheduling things when you've specifically told them like you're
Mhm.
not available, that can occasionally happen, maybe once.
Yeah.
But having it happen 6 7 8 times is a big red flag. And so like, then what else is going to be missed on your wedding day?
Mhm.
And just how much stress are you going to have leading into as you get closer, right? And you have this, they have almost like nothing planned
Nothing.
right now. And so that I would be super stressed out at this point in time.
It's funny because, like, in the prior question, where like you have the ick, yeah, get rid of them.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
one, this person hasn't done anything.
yeah,
This is like not even the ick. This is a freaking atom bomb on the drop on your wedding. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, cut them. I would read the contract to see what kind of recourse you have. A lot
yeah.
of these have lines specifically for like not doing the work as planned,
Mm-hmm.
or what kind of money you may or may not get back, any arbitration if possible. This redditor mentioned she's a lawyer. She's read the contract, so hopefully she can find a way to not be held liable for full cost, even with them not actually performing anything.
Yeah, I'm sure she, before signing it, went through it, and there's probably some kind of exit strategy. It also might
Mm-hmm.
be something that you have to, unfortunately, people that you don't have that legal background, it might be something that you have to tell them, hey, we're going in a different direction. We are firing you. Go hire another wedding planner that you feel more comfortable with, that is actually going to execute your vision. And you, in the background, unfortunately, might still be working on trying to get out of that original contract and payment structure or get money back. And that's going to unfortunately be like stress in the background, but you might just have to go hire another person, whether or not you know the outcome of that original contract and whether you're going to get money back. It's just unfortunately, you need somebody to step in immediately to make sure that everything's on track.
Yeah, and do that ASAP.
Yeah.
Don't hold on. Okay, Chris, next question. When you give cash as a wedding gift, is the amount you give based on your relationship with the couple or based on the venue? So, this sister is asking, my sister is attending a wedding on New Year's Eve for a friend of their family. The wedding is black tie and open bar all night. My sister was taking these factors into consideration when she was trying to figure out how much to give. I feel as though you should gift according to your relationship with the people. You may give different amount to family, close friends, coworkers, etc. for their wedding gift regardless of venue. Or you may give the same regardless of venue. Or you may give depending on the venue. I have heard that the fancier a wedding, the more you should give because it costs the bride and groom more to host the wedding at that venue. I don't personally believe in the pay for your plate gifting concept. If the bride and groom want to have a very fancy wedding, or if they want to have it at a barn, I would give them the same amount of money based on the relationship I have with them. What if I don't want to buy a formal dress or go all out and would never buy myself a $350 dinner? Am I obliged to give more? I obviously have no say in what they plan, so why do I give more based on their choices? But interested to hear what people think. I have not been to a wedding in many years, so maybe the pay for your plate is no longer a thing.
Wow, this is always the social part of it, right? That is always tricky because there's no clear answer, and a lot of people have strong feelings about this sort of situation. I kind of lean towards the not pay for your plate, but more on the relationship with the people, regardless of where they are. So if they want to have a black tie, I mean, you can factor that in a bit if you want, but I think it's more so you should be giving based on the relationship with the people getting married, you know, with some caveats, but that's just kind of my general thought. It doesn't matter where they're having it or if it's extra fancy or not, you know, give based on that relationship and what you can afford to as well. So like some people might not gift you anything and it is what it is. You should still be happy that they're there. That's a rare circumstance. But again, at the end of the day, you're not trying to recoup your cost for the wedding. You should never be planning for that. And so again, it should just be based on what you can give. And I think more on the relationship than the venue.
Yeah, no, Chris, I think we generally fall on the same line of this. I think going with the idea of pay your own plate, and I think this is more of an American thing, or maybe I don't know exactly where this thing started, but like A, you have no idea what that plate costs. So like, how are you even going to pay for that? B, most of the costs of the wedding, yes, dinner and drinks are half the cost, but then there's all the other costs. So like, are you paying for the plate? Are you paying for the bar? Are you paying for the DJ? Are you paying for the
florals?
Paying for the floors? Are you paying for the dress? Like, where does it end? You know, where does the plate stop and the rest of the shit end? So like, you can't even begin to imagine what that cost is. And like, Chris, I know from wedding planning, like you would look at a venue and try to find like an idea of what their shit costs online. 50-50, and if they even have a packet of like what their actual cost was, like you have no idea what the plate actually costs. So I think giving based on your relationship with a couple is what makes the most sense, and also obviously what you can afford first and your relationship second. I think people get too in their head about trying to like be the coolest about what their gift is, or trying to seem like they're better than maybe they are, or trying to put some kind of image out there. But like at the end of the day, it's what you can afford, and like who these people are to you should kind of dictate what that gift is. And as the people throwing the wedding, like you shouldn't be planning on recouping every dollar that you spent on your wedding.
And I will say, like, you know, I think Catherine and I were both more into the like, you should just give whatever you think you can in cash, just because like that's a little bit easier. But I think it was an important point to also still make sure that you had a registry for people that want to give gifts, because they can be of different values. And that's why you should have different valued gifts on your registry, because some people might feel more comfortable doing that than giving a cash gift. And it also allows them to gift you something without having to do all this awkward calculations and social calculations. So, you know, even though you might not want to, also, you know, try to have a registry and try to, you know, take it seriously.
Yeah, Chris, actually, I'm glad you mentioned this. I didn't think about this, but this is a really good point. The registry will kind of tell your guests roughly the ballpark that you think like a gift is reasonable with. So like, it's a weird way of being like, hey, I want this without saying it. And like people appreciate it. Like with weddings, there's always a song and dance of like, what's reasonable, what's not reasonable, what do I say, what do I give, what's common. This person mentioned like they haven't been to a wedding in years. So, I mean, weddings 10 years ago, maybe giving $100 a person is reasonable. And maybe 10 years later, that number bumps up to 150, 200. Inflation,
Mhm.
things get more expensive. Like you never know. So the registry is great. That's why it's out there. So your guests are less confused and they're actually getting you something that you want. And some people don't want to give money. They want to give like an item instead. It kind of fits in all your lines.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it on a couple different episodes too. Don't be the cringy bride and groom where you actually tell people like this is the expectation for the gift, for the cash gift, or this is what your plate cost. That's just creating a lot more awkwardness and is another red flag of just like this is purely transactional. You're throwing a party for your guests, sure, but ultimately you are the ones making the decisions of what everything costs, and so you shouldn't put that back on your guests to attend and like again paying for a ticket to arrive to your wedding. It's just it's a faux pas and just kind of I don't know, just wouldn't want to make me be friends with those people.
Yeah, at that point you're a promoter, right? Not getting married. It's so
bad.
Okay, Chris, let's do. Okay, is the big wedding worth it? This bride asks, on the one hand, having an intimate 20 to 40 person wedding sounds simple and great and lovely. However, I had a dream the other night about walking down the aisle with everyone I love on either side and woke up so happy. I feel that this is a silly reason to have a big wedding, but my parents are open to helping, so dollars isn't the biggest concern. Our big wedding would still be under 150 people, so it is kind of medium compared to some of the weddings I've been to. My fiance hates attention and wasting money. So initially, I was kind of conceding to a small wedding. But the more I think about it, the more I'm leaning towards a larger guest list. There's so many people in my life and I love and would love to celebrate with. I guess my question is, those of you who have done the whole shebang, was it worth it? Do you wish it was smaller? Any advice appreciated?
Ooh, that's a heavy one.
It's interesting.
I think ultimately, obviously, have that conversation with your partner on if you're starting to change your mind and see how they feel, and just have an honest conversation. But if you were going to hold to the original plan, I would say maybe look for an interesting venue, or there's a lot of things you can do with. Again, if it's more about making a statement piece and walking down the aisle, you can do a lot with like decorations and finding the right venue that could check off a lot of boxes and give you that similar feeling in a more intimate space where you still might be able to save some money. So again, you can try to maybe do a half measure, but I think it comes down to just having that communication with your partner and the budget at the end of the day, right? Like, can you afford the big wedding? And I think that kind of leads you to the end goal, but I'm interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to understand, what does this person mean by a big wedding, right? Is a big wedding just people, just raw guest count?
Yeah.
Is a big wedding multiple events? Is a big wedding all the traditional things that you're talking about they can get in the venue? Like what does that mean?
Yeah.
It sounds like this person is specifically talking about people. Big wedding, just a lot of people coming in. And from my point of view, it's funny because to me, 150 is not big. I've been to weddings that are much bigger than that, right? And I think 150 people is teetering on the line of everyone to where you might not necessarily have time to spend with everyone, but still not huge. But to me, 40 people seems too small, right? But that's just me personally.
That's
And
very,
that would
very
be,
intimate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very intimate. And that would have to be where you kind of have to talk to your fiance, in this case, her future husband. And it sounds like he hates attention and wasting money. So, like, this is where you kind of enter an impasse. So you got to realize what is more important to the other person and where can you maybe make some kind of trade-off. Like, is maybe then you go to 75 people. 75 people still feels decent. You still have people around you. It's not as intimate as 40, but it's not like barren either.
It's so interesting. I think this person just needs to kind of really sit down and think about what they desire, right? And where this is coming from. Because there also might be I don't know, like it might be weird, but it comes down to their partner's sense of, nervousness about being the center of attention. I almost feel like having that smaller intimate wedding is kind of, you have more attention thrust upon yourself in a way, because you can't really hide anywhere. versus
That is
having a
actually a
big
good point.
wedding, a little
Mhm.
bit like it's a strange, way to think about it, but you can kind of hide in a bigger wedding in a way. And I don't know if there's maybe any sort of middle ground too of you maybe have a more intimate ceremony, but then you have like kind of a bigger reception where people just come to the reception. Again, it's non-traditional, might be a little weird, might
Mhm.
require you to have some explanations with people on why you're going this route. But, again, it's your wedding, so you can be creative on how you do things.
Yeah, I think the gist I get from this is that before they started planning anything, they both kind of agreed to everything abstractly, right? As now they're kind of into the weeds, and this person has maybe seen other weddings or
Mm-hmm.
been down the social media rabbit hole. She's like, oh, wait, maybe I do actually want it this
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
And like, this is where it kind of gets hard. This is where you're going to have to compromise one way or another. And I do like that this person is like considering their like future husband's feelings, because I've read so many where like the bride doesn't. It's like her day, like not really putting much time into it. But it seems like they both kind of have something they want to do. And I think there is a middle ground here. I don't think necessarily maybe 150. But Chris, you mentioned a very good point. When you have 30 people there, it is much harder to kind of slip away in the background versus when you have 150 people there. So, I mean, this this future bride might actually be able to like kind of talk about that. Be like, hey, it's maybe easier to kind of find some time when there's so many other people mingling everywhere
Mm-hmm.
instead of just 30 looking at us for every single thing.
Yeah. And then you always have an excuse to go talk to somebody else because you're like, oh, I just haven't seen this person. I got to go talk to this person. You're only
Exactly.
spending a minute, 2 minutes with
Mm-hmm.
everybody versus like, oh, I have to talk to this person for 20 minutes now. Again, if you have like this like social nervousness about, interacting with people, you're gonna have to be focused on one
Yeah.
person for the smaller wedding versus the other. Yeah. Cause I mean, like in our wedding, it just felt like I would talk to somebody for a minute, then get pulled in a different
Mm-hmm.
direction, talk to that person for a minute. And like, before I knew it, it was like 2 a.m.
Yeah. Exactly. But to kind of go back to the question, is the big
Yeah.
wedding worth it? Because I know we both kind of had weddings that were around this
That
guest
size.
count.
Yeah.
We were like, what, 110, 120, not quite
Yeah.
150, but like still in the triple digits. I think yes. I loved everyone that was there. Like, I didn't regret having a bigger wedding. And at the same time, I also didn't regret not having a bigger wedding than that, right? Like, if we were at 200 people, like, I don't feel a sense of regret that we didn't go that high. Is
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like, I think the beginning of triple digits is totally fine, totally doable, enough time for everyone, but also enough time for yourself.
Yeah, I think that like again, just personal opinion, like that 125 mark, and then plus or minus maybe 20 people, is the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
That way, again, like yeah, as you said, like you have time to interact with people. The relationship quality is also probably very high with
Yep.
everyone being there, being very close, just depending on family sizes and friend sizes. But I think that is a good, reasonable size where everyone kind of knows each other, and you could feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. Perfect. Chris, I think we agree on that. Yeah, so these are just some things to think about. These are a little bit more deep
Like
than
yeah,
last
like real life
week's.
situations instead of just like abstract.
Yeah, these wedding planner ones. Wedding planners cost a lot of money,
Yeah. Do
right?
your research ahead of time. Do not take it lightly. Do not sign anything. Interview
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different people. Also, people of different styles that might
Mm-hmm.
exactly not align with your own, right? Like you might see somebody else that it does a different way and still interview them just to get a sense. And maybe you're actually going to like the blending of your styles might actually, produce something special and magical. So again, just keep an open mind, but
Yep.
do that research ahead of time and don't just hire the first person that you see, and take the time to look at their social media, websites,
Mm-hmm.
portfolio to see what they've done in the past. So you're going to save yourself a lot of headache.
Yep. Yep. Listen to your gut. Your feelings are valid on this. Just the ick is fine. Like, you're spending a lot of money. Just doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Uh,
And doing the research ahead of time will prevent you from having to lose like 30% of your deposit like that person potentially is.
Yeah. Yeah, so it adds up. But yeah, Chris, everyone, thanks for hanging out. Like and subscribe. Chris, I'll see you again next week.
See you next time.
All right, bye.